Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Becoming a Professional. I'm your host, Rilley Ramos, and we are here recording from Atlanta, Georgia. So we're actually at a mid-year meeting right now, and what perfect timing to catch an interview with some of our fantastic alumni. So before we introduce the guest, let's go through our usual housekeeping. First off, this episode is brought to you by the National Chapter of Beta Alpha Psi. Enormous appreciation for their support. Make sure to sign up for the Alumni Member Network if you haven't already, so we can easily connect and have y'all experience the benefits of the network, of what the network has to offer. That, and then, of course, our typical disclaimer, the opinions in this podcast are our own and may not reflect the position of Beta Alpha Psi or our respective employers as a whole. So, housekeeping, check. All right, so I'm excited for today's guest, as she is honestly one of the reasons why I joined Beta Alpha Psi's board of directors. She leads the internal audit data analytics department at Intuitive Surgical and specializes in continuous monitoring, fraud analytics, and process improvement through analytic process automation. Please welcome our special guest, the innovative Danielle Brannock. Yes, that's right.
Innovative. Thank you so much for having me, Rilley. I'm excited to be here.
I know. I'm super excited for you to finally guest. And so we've had past guests mention you by name as far as like, hey, you got to have her on the podcast as far as like the different topics that the students are asking about. So this episode, FinTech, has been one that keeps coming up. It's something that we need to address and I feel like that's the future of how all these different industries that BAP specializes can come together. So first off, origin story. Gotta love a good origin story. Where did you go to school, and what made you to decide your major?
Yeah, so I started my undergraduate degree at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, where I joined Beta Alpha Psi and became an officer. Yeah. Before that, though, I actually started out at a community college. So I went to Gadsden State Community College and received a 2-year degree in paralegal research. And my long-term goal was to become a lawyer. Okay. I actually chose accounting as my backup plan, so I didn't want to do poli-sci. Okay. You can't do a lot with poli-sci. So I went with accounting. It seemed like a really good way to get into kind of a regulatory space that would lead well into a law degree. And along the way, I learned that you can be a tax attorney as just a CPA. Okay. So from that, I was kind of diverting my plan. It was no longer law school. And then I took an analytics course and a fraud class at UAB. And in my fraud class, my professor had me print out dozens of pages of general ledger transactions and hunt for fraud with a highlighter. And I vividly recall this moment on my apartment floor with the papers spread and the highlighters in hand, and loving the thrill of the chase and the investigation, but hating the process. And then coming back to her and turning in the case study and being told that, well, in real life, you could use data analytics to do this. Right. And the rest is kind of history from there.
Okay. Now, how far into your college career did you make the switch to accounting? Or was it more of a double major or a minor in accounting?
Yeah, so I did a 2-year of paralegal and then immediately decided that I wanted to go on for a 4-year degree. Mm-hmm. And so with that, I went straight into accounting.
Gotcha. Okay.
I did deviate a bit within that. I had a concentration at one point in forensics that I finished, and I also decided to minor in information systems. Okay. I never completed the minor, but I did take a few classes in that department. And the reason I didn't complete the minor was actually that PwC made a job offer for me to move to Atlanta and join their analytics practice. And they said that they did not want to wait for me to finish the minor. I would have had another semester to 2 semesters to go. And that anything I would have learned in my IS program, they could have taught me themselves on the job, and they went on to do that.
OTJ, I love it. Okay. So you kind of went straight into the next question, which is a perfect segue. But as far as your initial stages of your professional career after college, you mentioned PwC. What did that look like?
Yeah, so PwC made me an offer while I was in my senior year. I actually relocated for it, so I went from Birmingham, Alabama to Atlanta. Oh, man. Very nerve-wracking, very intimidating. It was a dedicated team of data analysts, and at the time they made me this full-time offer with no internship beforehand, I had never written a line of code. So I moved out here.
Interesting.
It was a big leap of faith. There were some tears. It went well,
Some
obviously.
tears, a lot of tears.
So if you're crying over your analytics classes in college, I always tell students it's okay. We all cry over our code.
We've all been there,
Yeah.
for sure, especially with beginning your career, trying to figure out what am I doing with my life. Tears are, I feel like, essential.
Absolutely. And you grow from those tears, 100%.
That's so funny. Now, what was it? So we're here at the mid-year meeting, and you've been in Beta Alpha Psi during your college career. But interesting enough, you're here. It kind of comes full circle because you're no longer here as, I guess, well, you're always an alumni member, but you're actually the meeting's keynote speaker. Yeah, how's that feel?
Unreal, I guess, is a really good way to describe it. It is a big full circle. There's that moment of just kind of standing up on the stage. We just finished it a little bit ago. I had about an hour to decompress before meeting with you.
Mm-hmm.
There was certainly a moment afterwards of just looking back with, wait, did I really just do that? Maybe a little bit of a brownout from the adrenaline, but it was amazing. I'm so passionate about students and individuals in accounting and their desire to grow and learn technology. And I know it can be such an intimidating topic. So being asked to come keynote this conference, I was specifically told the theme, which of course is embrace innovation and empower professionals.
Right.
Which is pretty much my...
That's all you right
that's
there.
Me. That's my whole MO. That's what I do with my whole career. And so it was a thrill, really. It was kind of the peak of my freelancing career, I guess.
Yeah.
I do a lot with my book and public speaking, and this was certainly a bucket list item for me.
I love that. Now, also with your past experience in Beta Alpha Psi, so how I met her, she might not even remember this because it was so long ago. This was back in like 2016, I believe was one of my first regional meetings, and Danielle was on the board as the international rep. Back then it was called the international rep. Now it's called the alumni advocate. But so she was doing the panel that we have at the meetings, and as soon as she presented, after the panel, I came up to her and the other international rep at the time and asked them, like, I want to do this. What do I need to do? How do I do this? What is the process for application look like? And sure enough, worked my way up from back then it was a regional rep, now called a mid-year rep. And then so went from regional rep to international rep, and then now kind of like this has been our pet project, this podcast of like, hey, now we get to really interact with the alumni. So how far can we take this, and like what more can we do with our alumni?
Mm-hmm.
So, but can you talk about your experience as an international rep?
Absolutely. I do remember Pittsburgh, actually. I remember Pittsburgh vividly. I'll sidebar for a moment. One of my favorite things about being a rep was that you get to travel around and attend all of the different regional conferences. Mm-hmm. And so I had an opportunity to meet students from chapters all over the country. And my favorite part about that was the cultural differences of the regions.
Yes, you talked about this. I remember this.
Because the Mid-Atlantic scared me a little bit. I'm coming from the Southeast. We're very professional here, and there are some regions. I love Rocky Mountain and the Pacific Northwest, where everyone up there, even as far back as 2016, they were already embracing, I think, what the younger generations now are doing, which was just, I'm making a career for myself, and I'm not here for the rat race. I'm mm-hmm. here to live my life. And I remember going to the Atlantic Coast area, and it was like suits and vests and ties.
It's very corporate.
It was so corporate, and feeling almost overwhelmed. And here I was a professional, and these college students are intimidating me because they were so much more buttoned up than I'm used to being. But it's just so incredible to see how even just where you are geographically can impact the kind of career you're pursuing. But I absolutely loved my time on the board. It was educational for me. It was a stretch opportunity. I came in a non-traditional student, a single parent who had had a whole life before I got into accounting. And that life was in a completely different space. It was very creative. It was not corporate. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly here I am sitting around a a board table in a boardroom with all of these incredible academic professionals and talking to them about these strategic initiatives and how to create change at a global level in this organization. And it just lit a bit of a fire in me. And I think that was the moment when I really went from, I'm going to be a coder and I'm going to execute programming languages, to, no, I want to grow and I want to sit at tables where decisions are made.
I love that. Yeah, no, it really, having served on the board, you really get a sense of like, what can I do to build, I guess, kind of a legacy, or what can I do as far as, hey, this is what others will know me for, kind of thing. And so just having that innovative mindset about the things that you do in your day-to-day, that's kind of been, I guess, mind-blowing. And even the students I've talked to at this meeting after your keynote, they were telling me about how, like, wow, this person is pretty cool. She's pretty, like, she knows what's up. And even though, like, she has a journey, you can tell that she's in it for very forward thinking, not really stuck in the past, always trying to figure out, like, how can I make this better.
Yeah, the life motto that the person who introduced my keynote, at the end of my bio, I have this statement that my approach to everything is find a better way. And I literally have that on a sign that I've made in my office. And it's been there since about 2017.
Oh man, that's your identity.
That is me. Yes, find a better way and innovate.
I love that. Well, and that actually works out perfectly into our episode about FinTech. So for those who don't know what FinTech is, financial technology, it is quote unquote new technology that seeks to improve and automate the delivery and use of financial services. So what does this mean to you? It's very buzzy.
It's very buzzword. It is. It's a big buzzword. What does FinTech mean to me?
Also, don't mind the background noise.
I will continue.
Yeah.
What does it mean to me? It is kind of the embodiment of my entire career. I never heard it as a buzzword when I started out. Back in 2015, the term was there, but it wasn't something that was at the forefront. I think at that point in time, automation and whether you're talking about robotic process automation or analytic process automation, these were still considered emerging technologies. And so it was a big deal to do, for example, full population testing for an audit. That was still considered like an exciting possibility.
Yeah.
It's so interesting now. I'm about 9 years into my career, and all along the way, I've been FinTech and I've embraced FinTech, and I've just sought out opportunities to improve how things are done. And then you wake up one day and you realize that you are a buzzword. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. I guess I did something right here.
It's like, it's actually working.
It is, yeah. But for me, I support a lot of audits at work, but that's probably only about 20% of my time.
Okay.
The other 80%, I really do divide it between continuous monitoring, which is where we go out and we look throughout the organization's financial information, and we are looking for fraud red flags, or we're looking for policy violations. That's a large chunk of my work. But I also automate. And so for me, analytical process automation, as well as robotic process automation, I just like making people's lives easier.
Right.
The accounting and finance profession is tedious. Just to be real blunt, you have to be detail-oriented and patient to work in this space. And when I meet with a team in my organization and they're struggling, one of the first questions I will ask when I come to them for a project is, could you walk me through what keeps you up at night? What are you nervous about? And also, like, what do you hate about your job? I mean, it's a pretty blunt question.
Very good question, though.
It leads to a lot of very interesting projects.
Yeah. You might have to pull out the therapist couch. 'Cause we can be here for a while. But
oh, my gosh. I was probably,
no. I was
probably a therapist in a different part of the multiverse.
Oh, my gosh. Well, that actually, great segue. I feel like you kind of already know my outline anyways.
I don't. I didn't. I looked through it once.
But you're, like, reading my mind right now. But as far as, like, automation and how does this affect your day-to-day responsibilities overall, and I guess that outlook from a leadership perspective?
So automation is such an interesting process. I think, one, there's a lot of miscommunication between the profession and the academic space about what automation means.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Enlighten.
Okay, so when I tell people that I automate, generally the very first thing people assume is that I'm doing RPA, so robotic process automation.
Okay.
They think I'm in a software like Blue Prism, and I am just taking over someone's mouse and keyboard on their actual computer and performing a manual function. And now that might be an element of it, but that's not
Okay.
actually something I specialize in. I do a lot more around analytic process automation. So when you think about us as accounting and finance professionals, we work a lot with data. I mean, accounting
Okay.
is data
Yep.
is one of my other mottos in life. So we're working a lot with data, whether we're in Excel, we're, pivoting things, we're making reports. Sometimes we're in PDFs when we probably shouldn't be. I like to take those steps that someone might perform. So forget I'm generating emails for you. I'm actually taking the steps that an accountant may be doing. So let's say someone has to log into the front end of a system and they're pulling down a report.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing a general ledger. Maybe they need to pull certain, transaction details.
Mm-hmm.
I would be connecting my code to the back end, so the
Gotcha.
underlying database, pulling all of that data directly, and then performing all of my analysis over it. So where maybe they used to apply filters in Excel, put up a VLOOKUP, maybe type some if statements in a column,
Yeah.
I'm automating all of that in code, whether I'm using Python or Snowflake or something else.
Now, is there a lot of cleanup before running any of the software? You got to have that clean data before.
You
before
do,
running
yeah.
it?
A lot of it is data cleansing. If you're lucky, you're at a company that has a data warehouse, like an enterprise data warehouse available where it's already cleansed and modeled.
Okay.
But also, being in the audit space, one of the things that we have to be mindful of is our level of assurance that we place on the IT department. And so if I don't want to audit the code of the entire IT department where they have these
It can
data
be a lot.
pipelines, it's a lot. They don't want me to do that. I don't want to do that. No one's happy.
Yeah.
Instead, a lot of times what we'll do is go get access to the underlying data lake. So the difference in a data warehouse and a data lake is literally, is the data cleansed and modeled yet? The data lake is just a raw staging place for all of the data coming from your production systems.
Okay.
We'll tap in there, and then yes, we do a lot of modeling and cleansing on our own. So then we're not having to rely on the IT department to do that for us.
Okay. Now, from a student perspective, what's the best way to, I guess, be introduced into this space?
Yeah, so I am very passionate that you can be tool agnostic. You can pick any tool you want. There is nothing saying that getting a Tableau certification in college is better than learning how to use Power BI. And there is nothing saying that R or Python, either one is the better decision.
Okay, good to know. Good to know.
I very much believe that students should start with the fundamentals of relational databases. And that is a very basic statement. I know it is. But until you can really understand how data is formatted and you're able to really understand nuances and risks of working with data, how to cleanse it, how to join it to other data sets,
Okay.
and what problematic moments you may encounter doing that. Until you understand those fundamentals, you probably shouldn't be jumping straight into something like learning SQL or Python.
And I feel like that's where a lot of students or people who are trying to be introduced into this kind of go head first. They dive straight into it, and then they get overwhelmed. It's like, that's not for me. It's like, well, you got to kind of have to dip your toe into it.
Absolutely. And I think, unfortunately, the academic space doesn't necessarily set everyone up for success with that. A lot of our texts are designed to just say, let's write a query, let's write a select statement in SQL. And if you're a student and you're just jumping straight into a select statement and you've never fully just looked at data and theoretically and conceptually learned how it works, that's daunting.
Gotcha. Now, as far as for the students go, you co-authored a textbook, right? What is it? Co-author of John Wiley and Sons First Edition Accounting Information Systems, Connecting Careers, Systems, and Analytics.
Yes, that is my pet project.
Okay. so let's talk about that. So how long has that process been? I guess what is it like to co-author?
So I can give you, I guess, a little bit of the journey, how I even got there, because
Yeah.
I am only 37 and not a PhD. And so it's a bit unusual that I'm even on a book. I was invited to be a contributor at first. So the lead author on that, Dr. Savage, was one of my professors. In fact, she is the one who gave me the case study of paper and highlighters. So she's a very big
Wow.
pivotal part of my career choices. So she asked me to come as a contributor. And a contributor is someone who fulfills a set of expectations for a one-time like financial payment. And so she just wanted me to kind of proof the work that was being done and make sure that it was relevant for the modern audience.
Gotcha.
I did a really good job at that. And so the next thing I know, Dr. Savage and Wiley offered me a position as a co-author, royalty bearing. Obviously, my name is on the front of the book now. It was exhausting and exciting and such a stretch opportunity. And again, probably the coolest and most amazing thing I will ever do in my life is have that book out there. We spent 2 years writing. It's a first edition, and so that means that we were not able to leverage any existing work.
Wow.
Every
okay.
word.
It's original.
It's completely original. Every word, every illustration, every question at the end of a chapter, all brand new, original. That was amazing because one of my passions is we need it to be relevant. It's got to be comprehensible. I don't believe in making academic things complicated for the sake of academics. That's not my style. I wanted it to be conversational, and I wanted the problems and the questions and the test banks to be relevant to actual early career. And so a lot of things you're going to see in that book, if a student uses it, they come from what I encountered on the job in my first 1 to 5 years working. So there are problem sets in there that are based off of real company data that we've masked. And then I have analytics questions in there where it's something I did my first year at PwC. So completely accessible and very relevant to what I would call the real world.
Okay, yeah. No, because I feel like that is one of the shortfalls where textbooks forget who the end user is, the students. So you really have to be communicating to, okay, if I were a student, what's the best way for me to learn the material?
Yeah.
If it gets a little too if it gets too stuck in the jargon, then you lost me.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a chunk in the book actually where I was able to, I authored some content for SQL. I actually pushed very hard to have it in the course.
Okay.
Yeah, we did some research, focus groups to see how professors felt, and we got enough positive feedback that I pushed for it and I wrote it. And I love it. It is my favorite part of the whole course. And we've gotten such great feedback about it because no one's writing code. Again, it's conceptual. It is the fundamentals with screenshots of little bits of data, some arrows pointing to you, like visually what's happening behind the scenes of your code.
Wow. Now, how long has the book been out?
So the book was published in the beginning of 2022. So this was a pandemic project, thankfully. Yeah. We signed our contract in 2019, started fully authoring in 2020, and then tied a bow on it in December of 2021.
Okay. Now, is this only limited to a certain university, or is it pretty much across the country who has access to this textbook?
So it's actually available globally. It's currently in use in the US and Canada.
Okay.
And it's for students who aren't aware how this works, actually, it is up to a professor's discretion what book that they choose to adopt in their classroom. And then they have to go pitch that, of course, to the chair of the department and make sure that everything's in line with the university. So it's up to professors to choose to adopt. We are in a number of schools, quite a few. It's been a great market penetration for us for only being out there for a little over a year now. Okay,
because one of the students, when they saw your book on the screen during your keynote, they pointed it out to me too. They were like, "Oh, I'm in that class, and we're using that book."
I had a group come up to me afterwards to take a selfie because they wanted to show their professor.
It was probably
they were like, "We got to get a picture
student
with you. My professor's going to be so excited that I met you." It was kind of a surreal moment for me, but
they should have brought their textbook. They could have done a book signing.
Oh my. Well, to be fair, most of them are digital these days.
Oh,
but
okay. Well, that's fair. I'm kind of old school. I prefer the textbook.
Yeah.
No, but I mean that is so cool. Like we're actually like in the presence of an author. I love it. But yeah, so now to keep things moving as far as wrapping this up, we always ask, now this is a two-parter question. We always ask our guests, what is your favorite beta alpha psi memory? This is a big one.
It is a big one. Oh man. Okay, I think I'm there. In my undergraduate program, when I was an officer, I ended up being the community service officer. So I planned all of our, volunteer activities for the year.
Okay.
And that's something near and dear to me. I actually worked at a nonprofit at the Boys and Girls Clubs as a director before entering my accounting career. And it was just incredible. It's not one specific event. We did everything from, stocking the books at a library to cutting back invasive species plants at a park near, like a preserve near us.
Yeah.
And then there's this one particular nonprofit in Birmingham that I'm going to plug. It is called the Red Barn. And the Red Barn is an equestrian program for at-need children. And they actually, my daughter was in kindergarten my senior year, and I was a single parent. Mm-hmm. And they allowed my daughter to be part of their program. She took riding lessons with them at no cost to me to build her social skills because she had a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
And so I brought out our Beta Alpha Psi chapter to the Red Barn, and we made one group made arts and crafts for them to sell as part of a fundraiser. Another group was literally mucking stalls. I mean, we broke up into different parts of the Oregon, went around the whole property, but it was just really special to me, I think, to share that particular nonprofit with my whole chapter. Mm-hmm. And I know they've been back since I've graduated. So it's very exciting.
That's so cool. Okay, because that reminds me of something similar that we have back home. It's called Equa Kids. Pretty much the same gist. And so for me, before I had my start in accounting, I was a personal aide for kids on the autism spectrum. So I actually worked with a family of 4 kids in the family, 3 of whom are autistic. And so that was one of the therapy sessions that we got to do, was take the kids to Equa Kids and pretty much just have a day of just a day of fun.
Yeah,
so
and it's incredible.
I love
it's
it.
incredible to watch children with any kind of needs connect with animals. It's just such a unique thing, and it can bring them out of their shells and give them all kinds of confidence. So it's very near and dear to me as well.
Yeah, no. So that's really cool that you were able to get your chapter linked into that. So that's awesome.
Can I add a second?
Go for it.
Okay, so I'm going to plug my faculty advisor. So Professor Eddie Neighbors is currently the faculty advisor for the University of Alabama at Birmingham. He's also actually, I believe, in an administrative role on the board of directors for Beta Alpha Psi right now. Yeah. Yep. So Professor Neighbors, I call him my pseudo-dad.
I'm not surprised.
He literally walked me down the aisle in 2019.
Did he?
He came all the way out to Atlanta, walked me down the aisle. He is such a special person to me.
Yeah.
And that all came about through Beta Alpha Psi.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, because so we did another interview in the past. This may have been like our second or third episode or whatever. But we interviewed a young lady who was also from UAB, and she met her husband through Beta Alpha Psi, and they were from different chapters. But Eddie, before I even met this person, Eddie at a board meeting was saying how this organization has done a lot for his students, and he is very much a part of their lives. And I think he's also planning on attending their wedding as well.
I believe it. Yes, it's been wonderful. So very important figure in my life, 100%. Go-to person for making these big decisions. I know in my keynote today, I talked about decision points along my journey where I had to make hard choices, and sometimes you're faced with 2 opportunities that both have completely different potential impacts, but are both great. And he's one of my go-to mentors.
I was about to say, was he the person on your shoulder pretty much?
At one point, I was actually considering getting my PhD.
Really?
I wanted to teach, and it was Professor Neighbors who sat with me and posed a question I will never forget. He said, Danielle, when you picture yourself in 10 years, do you picture yourself in a classroom teaching the same content that you taught last semester? Or do you picture yourself at Google making incredible changes to an entire organization? And I was like, Google.
Yeah,
immediately. Innovation, technology, Google. Well, now it's no longer Google, but I do work for a pretty awesome robotics firm, so I feel like I've achieved that.
Yeah, no, because she talked about it earlier during her keynote, and because you're currently at Intuitive Surgical?
Yes.
And so, right now my wife and I we're on Grey's Anatomy, just like that, and it's all surgery. And so just hearing you talk about that kind of stuff, I'm like, okay, what episode am I looking at? Is this being implemented? But maybe I'm way too far before any of this can even come to fruition. This is probably like super future tech compared to what I'm watching. I'm like on season 6 or something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible actually. So Intuitive's first robots were launched 30 years ago, if you can believe that. So there was robotic surgery. Mm-hmm.
No way. Okay.
Yeah, it's actually, so we call ourselves a startup because we're based out of the Bay Area.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's a startup culture. It's a small group of employees. And so they've been able to maintain that. And we do still have employees who work for us that were maybe like employee number 10 or 20 of the startup.
Wow.
But you're talking about a startup that's been around since late 90s, early 2000s or thereabout.
Gotcha. And it's been pretty much a whole journey from where you were back in your college days now to how you got to Intuitive. Now, with that being said, now this is kind of the last question that we wrap things up with, but how did Beta Alpha Psi help you become a professional?
Beta Alpha Psi is the only reason I am a professional. So I went into my undergraduate of accounting clueless. So prior to this, prior to this, I was, again, non-traditional student. I had a career in cosmetology. So I was a hairstylist. I was a color specialist, very creative and people-centric service industry. And I had no idea how a company worked. And it was that first meeting at Beta Alpha Psi where Deloitte came out and they were talking to us about Deloitte University. And it was like a switch got turned on in my brain where I was like, forget creative service industry background. I want to wear a suit and tie. I want to be a power person. This is where I'm going in my life. I want to be white collar and corporate all the way. And from that moment on, suddenly the grades mattered. Suddenly the GPA was important and the extracurriculars were a big deal. And that was just a pivotal switch that, of course, led to me eventually being at PwC. And so I owe my whole career path to Beta Alpha Psi.
I love it. Yeah, no, I'm definitely in the same boat as you because if it wasn't for BAP, I honestly wouldn't have anything that I have now as far as I don't know if I ever told you, but like I met my wife through Beta Alpha Psi as well.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it was at an annual meeting in Anaheim, and the Friday night event was Disneyland.
I was there. I went to Disneyland.
Okay.
I was at that one.
Yeah, and so that's where we met, and then we stayed in touch until after we both graduated, and then from there, I mean, she was the one who shot her shot and initiated the thing.
Good for her. Okay.
Yeah, we love that. Please, ladies, please
shoot your shot. Yeah.
And so, I mean, the rest is history from there, and I'm gonna use this episode as my wife's gonna kill me. I'm gonna use this episode as our official announcement. We're actually expecting. Yeah. It's crazy.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah, so it's going to be at least the first Beta Alpha Psi baby that I know of.
I'm so excited for you. That is wonderful. My child is about to turn 15, so long past that phase, but it's just such a fun time to be in. So good luck to both of you. Yeah.
Thank you. But so, I mean, that's pretty much all the time that we have. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow us from whatever platform you're tuning in from. Also, check out the show notes for our various social media pages and official BAP swag. Danielle, thank you again for guesting on our podcast. It was such a pleasure to hear your story, like probably one of my favorites. Yeah. And so with that, we'll see you on the next episode of Becoming a Professional. Hey everyone, Riley here with the credits. This episode, titled Embracing Innovation with Danielle Brannock, was hosted by myself, Riley Ramos, and accompanied by our special guest, the wonderful Danielle Brannock. The episode was recorded in Atlanta, Georgia. Music was sourced from Resolute Audio and Fine-Tune Music on Adobe Stock. Huge shout out to Beta Alpha Psi for their financial support in keeping the podcast going strong. If you haven't already, please join the Alumni and Member Network. Details can be found in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode of Becoming a Professional.